Anybody got any questions? Here are all the people who know all the answers, though. I imagine sometimes you sitting and listening and going, I know that one. I know that one, because you've been there so long. I got wrapped up today in a couple of things that shouldn't have been looking into. I should have waited until afterwards, but it's so hard when you get something new that you haven't seen before. Say, well, yeah, cool. I look at that. I should have put this later into the presentation because it fits with one of the topics that I already had in there. But Gail Morrell was at the Waterford Library with us this week. We got a lot done in the library garden, and then we went inside to talk about bulbs. And I'd asked Gail how she keeps track of where she has. I think she said she's got over 20 varieties of earliest bulb, snowdrops. And I said, how do you keep track of which ones they are and where they are? I mean, bulbs, when they disappear, that's it. You can't remember them at all. And she uses these flat topped markers and has a protocol. She always puts them at the front edge, whatever is the front edge of toward the front of the garden. She puts the marker there so she can find it. She says that she can't find anything satisfactory to write with. It doesn't wear off. So she uses a permanent marker and rewrites them every year. I found pencil works really good on a lot of them. Just lead pencil works really well on a lot of those plastic things. So that's an idea because it is annoying to know that I've got that clump of daffodils that comes up and I never see them because they're back behind the hydrangeas. I should dig them up and move them, but where are they? I don't know. This time of year you can't find them. Barbara, do you want to talk? Go right ahead.
Yes, I do. I have a question about pumpkins.
Uh-huh.
Um, I did not plant any pumpkins, but they came up spontaneously for some reason. My question is, how long do you leave them on the vine? They're about maybe halfway turned orange. They're not huge ones. They're not the mini ones. They're like I guess a small to medium size ones.
You leave them in until all sides are firm. You can put a fingernail into them and not make a deep gouge. And this time of year, you have to try to turn them if you can to get the side that's not done into the sun, as it's a kind of a race to the final uh, to the finish line for this time of year. That's neat to have your own pumpkins, though, isn't it? Are they all orange pumpkins?
Yes, they're orange ones, and I'm surprised they came up because I did not plant them.
That
So you're
sounds
saying that it's the firmness that counts, or it's the
yeah.
color that counts?
Well, the color will probably change along with it, but the firmness is what counts. You press your nail into the rind of the pumpkin, and it might pierce it, but it is firm. It's not you can't gouge into it.
Okay, and so that's when it's okay to take it away from the vine.
Yeah, and that's when you want to cut it with the top attached, leave some top attached because that helps keep it from um, over ripening.
Okay. Well, I also apparently grew tomatoes that I never planted. So I don't know if this is a seed bank because we like weeded the area or if it's bird poop or what, but we were surprised to see
I
three
have
pumpkins and a couple tomato plants that we never planted.
I have put tomatoes a good 50 feet from where we've ever had tomatoes in the yard. And I'm pretty sure that a squirrel or a bird picked up and moved around one of the fruits that fell on the ground at some point. I had a friend client that he would every year in the winter, he would take his favorite tomato, whatever was the last one to ripen, he would take it out into the garden and step on it. And he said, there, I've now planted my tomato seeds and we'll see what comes up. Tend to get a lot of cherry tomatoes when you do that with the hybrids, but sometimes you get something really wonderful. Mostly when
Okay.
when my squash came back, they were always hybrids of something.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Tanya sent a link to a clip from Fox 2 News where this gentleman, I think his name is Derek Kevra, he was explaining why there's so many oak acorns some years. And he's at his mom's house, and she's raked up 13 garbage cans of acorns so far. But he's talking about the acorns from oaks are called mast, and there is a term mast year for when the oaks drop a lot of seeds all at once. We've known for a long time they do it, and the scientists, botanists figure that the reason that they drop a heavy crop now and then, it's not regular. It's not like some crab apples and apples are alternate year bloomers. Heavy crop, light crop, heavy crop, light crop, heavy crop, light crop. Oaks don't do that. They might go 2 years, they might go 4 years, they might go 5 years, and then they get a real heavy crop. The botanists feel that that's a survival mechanism for the oaks, that because so many animals, deer, squirrels, chipmunks, rabbits, eat the fallen acorns, that if they just drop a light number of them every year, they're mostly going to get eaten. But if they overwhelm the predators one year, then they are sure to get more oaks coming up. Um, and the region might be in tune, in sync, that the oaks all do it at the same time, but not necessarily. You can have a group of oaks that's on a different schedule than a group of oaks down the street. And they talked a little bit, mentioned the trees communicating with each other through their joined roots. And Tanya was interested in that. I reminded her of the book, the In Search of the Mother Tree, by Suzanne. What's your last name, Suzanne? By one of the earliest foresters to make the link between the fungus going into the roots and connecting the roots of even different species of trees to each other, so that they are talking, sending chemicals back and forth between them. Um, and it is pretty cool how they do that. They don't need to do that to do a heavy fruit crop. That might be just weather. You get a long enough pollination period and enough flowers, and you get a lot more coming down. But the talking together is fascinating and a little intimidating. We've I remember reading and keeping an article at some place in my binders in the back closet here. Um, Reading an article 30 years ago about if one edge of a forest, the trees along one edge of a forest are attacked by a new pest or a particularly heavy pest. And the example that they were using was the gypsy moth that had moved into Michigan fairly recently. If the trees on that side are attacked by the gypsy moth, they will tell the trees further into the woods and all the way to the other side of the woods, there's an attack coming. And by the time the gypsy moths get to the middle and the trees on the other side, they've already loaded themselves up with tannins that are insecticidal. If not killing insects, they discourage them from chewing. And they don't know for sure that that goes through the roots, but so much goes through the roots it could be. There are some aerial signals that plants can send too. There are a number of crops, tobacco is one of them, that send signals about whether they're stressed, water stressed. They can attract insects. They can also send signals to attract predator insects if they're attacked by an insect. And in the looking at the fungus between the roots, um, Suzanne, last name I can't remember, did at least one experiment where she was trying to prove to the forestry people who like to come in and plant all the same tree that they should leave some of the native trees, because there was some communication that would go on between the pines and the Douglas firs that they were planting and the aspens that were still there. So she had little trees repopulating an area, and they enclosed one of the trees in plastic and pumped the plastic full of, I think it was CO2 that they marked radioactively. I don't know quite how they do that, but the same way as when they're doing a scan of some kind and inject you with something that they can trace. So they put traceable CO2 into the bag, and within minutes, the trees next to the one that they bagged and were showing entry of that CO2 into their system. So that quickly, the CO2 was flooding the system of the first tree, going down through the fungus who were either taking it because they needed it or letting it pass through and going to the other trees. And that's just, I think that's beyond uh, freaky. That's makes me feel very, very, very small. So they're cool books. One is In Search of the Mother Tree about the root systems and getting acceptance of that theory and now science. And then there's the Light Eaters that we talked about earlier, which has a lot about roots and what they know, what they seem to show as a almost an intelligence. Biology tree. Susan Simard, thank you. Is that Carol who put that up? Somebody's always so good here. Oh, it's Chris. Thank you, Chris. Finding the mother tree. Oh, not In Search of the Mother Tree. Finding the mother tree. Oh, I'm substituting synonyms. Oh, does anyone, I started to ask the question and forgot what I was asking. Anyone in the group have a lace leaf buckthorn? They're finely divided. Rhamnus, I think it's Rhamnus cathartica with the divided leaves, but they call it Laciniata. If anybody has one and has had branches die back, have you figured out what the branches are dying back from? Because we got a question about that, about it's lace-leaf buckthorn and some branches dying back and some tiny holes in it, which are probably bark beetles, which are probably after the stress that caused the death. We've seen lace-leaf buckthorn do that before, but we haven't grown that many. I would say in the gardens that we did for people or took care of for people, we've had maybe 15 lace-leaf buckthorns that we saw, and that's not very many really for in comparison to other plants. But we did notice that of those 15, it was fairly common, maybe 7 times in there, that suddenly, kind of spontaneously, or it seemed like it was spontaneously, they had dieback. The branches would die back. Sometimes the whole shrub would then die back, and we did not, that I remember, ever find out why they were. I'm not real fond of those plants. So I never get really terribly excited about them, about saving them too. They are very pretty foliage, and they'll put up with all kinds of things. The first one I ever saw was growing in the corner of a courtyard underneath a pine. It looked like a pittosporum. It looked like a houseplant to me. I thought maybe they put a houseplant out there, but no, it was a lace-leaf buckthorn, and it was growing in basically no direct sun all day long and looking pretty good, filling the area nicely. And they will put up with that kind of thing, a lot of shade. I don't think they put up with water, with too much water, but they'll put up with different kinds of soils. Welcome to Free for All Friday. Everybody's welcome. Come celebrate growing, cultivate problem solving. This is our 56th episode session. Friday. It's Friday, October 10th, and we haven't been here for 3 weeks because we had 2 webinars in a row, so there's a lot of things that got built up. Coming to you from gardenatz.org. I'm Janet Makatovich. Stephen Nicola has opted out tonight. He's at a hockey game with our grandson. He's just adorable when he's involved with our grandson. We do have a website that we have put about 1,500 articles that we've written up there, meaning to build on them and build new stuff. We still have more articles to put up before we even get into the new stuff. And most of our new stuff, new writing, is actually going in terms of in the form of pictures and audio in our Free for All Friday videos and in our webinar videos, because we're loading those with information now. I should probably just take those and start transcribing them. And there's lots of stuff in there. And the search button works really well. Right now, the Free for All Fridays page, it's not showing on this copy that I made of it, but right under password Free for All here, there is now a link that you can click to get a list of our picks for the most drought tolerant plants this year. We're really terribly afraid that this might become the new normal. It certainly was predicted by scientists that as the climate changed, we would see more periods of very wet, followed by very dry, followed by very wet, more extreme weather. And if this is going to be the new normal, we definitely want to make more of the plants that did well even in a drought. And we don't water in the garden. We water only new plants and only with buckets, only the first year that they go in. So we're pretty much a true test sitting on top of 60 feet of sand in a drought year. So we made a list and I'll show it to you a little bit later and you're welcome to download it if you want to. We will almost certainly be adding to it. That's another thing I'll tell you about later. Climbing hydrangea can look really nice some falls. This year it's pretty droopy. And that's Lindera angustifolia, the Chinese spice bush, which we have a baby of out in the yard. And I just love it. The leaves turn that color and then they stay on through the winter time, fading to a kind of a parchment color. Very pretty plant. I the last time that we were together on Friday, I was talking about dividing plants. And I've been dividing things that we've targeted to make more of or to get rid of. And the ones that we get rid of, I'm dividing and putting into pots or bags and giving them to friends, but others I'm using more of. And sometimes when you dig things up, you get a whole tangle of roots. And I tell people, because it can be very difficult, I'll show you what it looked like with the one, and very difficult to sort them out. If you just rinse them off really well and cut, and don't be afraid to cut, that it's a necessary thing. Um, I showed the group cutting into and taking a section out of tall Coreopsis triteris, and I had cut a wedge into the crown and lifted it out. Now, I can do that because I know that it's a fibrous root system. I know that it's got a lot of small roots and that it's growing as offsets. So I know that I can cut right into the crown and get whole pieces. But if I don't know what a root is like, it might be a tap root, and cutting into the middle could end up cutting off roots rather that will not, in sections that will not be productive. So it's better to test and see what you've got. So I'm digging up balloon flower here because they don't really belong there. I just kind of plopped them in there years ago, and I have a place for them now. They certainly did well in the drought. Um, if you don't know what the roots look like, dig next to the root ball and pull the soil out of the hole so that you can see what you've got to work with. Balloon flower happens to have a tap root, so it has a whole bunch of these thong type deep roots. I've cut them off. I'm not going to follow them all the way down because I've run into tree roots, and you have to make your choices. The tree is more important to me than any of the perennials there. I'm not going to cut any more tree roots than I have to. Um, so I've bared that edge, and I say, okay, now I know what I'm looking at, so I can cut about that far out, about that same distance out around the rest of the plant, and as deep as I can cut, and I get this. They've been together 8 years, maybe 9. It's a long time for a perennial. And their tap root, which is what they have here, grows more than one crown, and the crowns are all tangled in with each other and the roots are fighting to get out. This one needs badly to be divided so that each stem can get more of its own root space. So I'm looking at the stems. These were the buried parts. You can see the white part was underground, and about an inch of the green was underground too. They start turning green as they get near the top. So those are my stems up here, and I'm cutting between two groups of stems. It takes a lot of cutting to cut through because I'm cutting right through a hard crown. I use it's a saw blade knife. Those root knives are good to use too. And now that's going to cut some roots, but you can't avoid that. They're too tangled together. You can't tease them out, not when they've wrapped in and out, over and under each other like that. And it's not going to matter because they can grow from the cut roots that you have to cut through. So you're going to end up with some pieces that you cut right through the roots, and you may be able to lift these pieces of root right off of there and just put this and the half right, slice right down through the tap root, and it will still grow. So you're going to end up with some pieces where you're seeing the cut sides. And I try to take them all the way down because see, here's a tree root growing through. And you could have weed roots like, well, many of the grasses would penetrate that way. But so would things like bishop's weed and whatever. And taking them all the way down to bare root and dividing them helps you get rid of the foreign roots that don't belong in there. So I end up with, from that clump, about 20 pieces with stems and roots, and some without stems. Because see, here's a close-up of the root itself, which is a little shrinky, right? A little shrinky, as in it's a little dry, so it's a little wrinkled. It generally has a smoother surface in between the buds, but you can see these are the buds that will grow. Now, if those buds remain below ground in the dark, in the moist, they will make new roots. If those buds are up high, up in that inch, up toward the top where the stems are beginning to turn green, if those buds are sitting up high and getting some light and some warmth, they will grow as stems instead of as roots. So you can actually take a tap-rooted plant, take that tap root of a, sorry, of a balloon flower, of a poppy, I don't know where these hiccups came from, a balloon flower, a poppy, baby's breath. You can actually cut the root into sections. And as long as you keep up, and put them near the surface, you'll have a whole bunch of them grow. So I put them all in a bucket to soak and get nice and hydrated, and then went to put them in. And they are still sitting now. I've emptied the water out of the bucket and wrapped them in wet newspaper because until we got some rain the other day, I could not even get a fork into the ground more than 4 inches. No matter how hard I try, it was so hard and so dry. We've had some rain now, and I think tomorrow I'll be able to get them in the ground. But no way was I going to dig 25 or 30 holes that took a jackhammer to dig. I also dug up another plant that I think is really interesting. I dug this up for Michelle, who's in our neighborhood garden group. This is prairie dock. That's a mature leaf of prairie dock on a mature plant. Great big leaves, all right down at the bottom of the plant. This is a seedling. This is a first year, just grew this year, seedling of prairie dock. And I love their roots. They grow in wet areas that are wet most of the year and dry part of the year. So they grow very deep. As they get older, this stem stays the same shape, but becomes deeper. So as it's now getting to be 10 inches deep, it's 2 inches across the top. When it gets to be 18 inches deep, it's 4 or 5 inches across the top. Digging up older ones is really a struggle. You're not going to get all the roots, and you don't need to get all the roots, but if you want to try, you can do that. Now, this one, prairie dock, like some of the other wetland plants that I've dug up, has a coating on it on this. It's almost plasticky feeling. And my theory is that that's to keep water out of the root. At those times when there's too much water, they want to absorb water only from the tips that are going way down deep and way out to the side to protect themselves from rot, from being deprived of water at all. Pretty cool stuff. It's a disappointing fall color here. Everything's all muted and browned. I like it better this way. No questions. And we probably lost everybody because we didn't send out a reminder. It's a good time to divide bulbs. If you can find them. Now this is fall blooming Crocus cachianus. It comes up just like the fall crocus, what we call it fall crocus. It's a colchicum. This one blooms without any leaves in the fall. In the spring, there's just lots of leaves. And then this one comes up like this. So, and crocuses are, I tend to put them around plants that will cover for them or give them some company later in the year. And quite often forget to cut those other plants down out of the way so I can see the crocus. I usually find them late and finishing. But they come up nicely and bloom late in the year. And like all of the crocus, they multiply rapidly. So rapidly. Here's the new bulbs are forming around the outside edge of the core. They're not bulbs. Crocuses are technically a corm. They're just a thickened stem. They don't have an embryo inside like a true bulb does. But they're making new corms around the outside edge of that thickened stem at the bottom. And they push on each other and they bubble right out of the soil. The middle of the clump will end up at the surface. So a good idea to divide them and make more of them. But bulbs are doing this right now. As the temperature changes in the soil, they're growing lots of root. So if you can move them now, you're moving them at the best time for them to get established and give you a good bloom the next year. This is a tulip. Um, this is a young lily bulb, a squill bulb, and I think it's a species tulip, but I've forgotten for sure. And those are all late September, early October digs. The more roots they have, the better they're going to be able to stand up next spring, and the better they're going to be able to weather any drought through the winter time that might dry out and hurt the embryo inside. So you can break them off. The new bulb, just like on the corm, is growing from the basal plate of the bulb. That's the new bulb, and you can break that off with its own roots. Well, while crocus are going down, and it's a great time to pick them up and divide them. At $10 a bulb, I prefer to let mine just multiply and keep dividing them myself. So I divide them pretty much every year, and I don't notice that there's any lack of colchicum in each cluster. So if you can find them, divide your bulbs.
We have a couple of questions.
Oh, okay.
First one is from print too small. I can't see it. Looks like Marvin.
Hey,
Do you
Barbara.
have additional photos of prairie dock?
Today I have just one in the drought tolerant plants. I have a young one. It's got all of its height, but not all of its leaves. Um, but I can put some in for next week because we have some beautiful pictures of them in full bloom. They are gorgeous natives, and I'd like to see more people. I'd be glad to send you seed or send you seedlings that I can get out of the ground. Um, I brought seed home from along Commerce Road going in toward Milford. One year we were driving along and I saw the big leaves in the side of the road in a wet area. It made Steve stop, ran out of the car, and found these beautiful big leaves that I didn't know what they belonged to. And Steve asked me, "So what is it?" I said, "I wish I knew. I wish it had a flower so I could tell what it was." And he laughed, pointed up over my head because the leaves are all down. The highest the leaves might come is about waist high on me. It's just single leaves coming up from the bottom. But the flower stalk has no leaves on it, goes straight up 10 or 12 feet and opens sunflowers about yay big. That they're very cheerful and the goldfinches like them a lot. So it was blooming, but I was so focused on the leaves, I didn't even see these stalks going up past my nose. We collected seed once we figured out it was prairie dock and that it's native in wet prairies and wet meadows. And that's not a real usual ecosystem for this part of Michigan, but there was some of it here. So I brought it home and planted the seed, and now that entire area where they were growing is a subdivision, and there's no prairie dock there anymore. So I like to see them being spread around a little bit. Another long answer for a short question.
Okay, the second question is from C. Herman. Colchicum seems to be deer resistant. What about fall crocus?
The fall crocus get attacked in the springtime. They eat the leaves in the spring. Now, I haven't found that keeps them from blooming because there's usually enough foliage and for a long enough period of time that I still get some blooms. Maybe I'd get more blooms if they didn't eat the leaves, but they don't seem to eat the flowers. The leaves, though, they eat. I wouldn't be surprised if rabbits might come along one day and eat that, but I don't have enough rabbits here to test them. And there are several kinds of fall crocus. There's Crocus tomasianus and Crocus cachianus, and I don't know, several other species. Um, a couple of them are not reliably hardy, but some of them are truly weeds. They just seed themselves all over into the grass and around. Not quite as bad as squill, but they do come up all over the place. I see a question from Jean. Hi, Jean. Welcome back to the Southlands here. She wants to move raspberries. Should I do it now or wait till spring? I'm always of a mind to move something in the fall if it's woody, if I can, because it has more time between now and when it leaves out to grow some root and be able to support the number of leaves that it's gonna produce. Then it will lose water in the wind and in the sun and heat. So I'd rather move them move them now. Um, it's not the greatest time of year to move them when the leaves are falling. It would have been better to do it earlier in the fall, but I'd do it now. this bear, we spilled wine on that mattress and put it out to air out, and the bear came and ripped it apart and ate all the pieces that had wine in it. Swan's taking off. How about while we're talking about digging things and dividing, should we get a backhoe and dig that big grass, or should we leave it for future generations? That's the question that Steve and I ask ourselves. And I want to start out by saying that if you have heard the story already, I apologize, but it's such a good story and such a good example of why we gardeners need to talk to each other that I got to tell you. I was talking about dividing grasses at a group of professional gardeners for the most part, and professional nurserymen, talking about the big grasses and how I really don't like to use them for most people because they become such huge clumps to try to divide and handle, and they just keep getting bigger and bigger. If you don't divide and handle them, they also get dead in the center. So I was talking about the difficulty in doing that, and I joked. I said, you could get a backhoe or you could dynamite them out of the ground. Well, a man came up to me after the talk, and he said, good talk. He said, but don't tell people to use dynamite on grasses. I said, well, I wasn't telling them to use dynamite on grasses. I was just making a joke. He said, well, don't tell them to do that. So of course I had to ask, have you used dynamite on grass? He said, well, I said, where'd you get dynamite from? He says, my brother can get almost anything. He was up at the cottage with me, and he wanted to go fishing, but I told him I'd promised my wife I was going to dig up the hedge of grasses that we have and divide them because they needed it. And he said, how long is that going to take? I said, it's going to take all day. Getting them out of the ground is really difficult. He said, well, let's just use dynamite. So we dug a hole on one side of the grass, going down at an angle, and he put in a stick of dynamite. We ran around behind the shed, and the dynamite went off, and nothing happened. And I said, see, even dynamite doesn't get them out of the ground. He said, no, 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 we just need to use 2 sticks of dynamite. So he put in 2 sticks of dynamite, ran behind the shed. The dynamite went off, and the grass disappeared. We stood there, he said, and looked around and went, well, it's not going to do me any good if it vaporizes the grass. And then we heard a noise and looked up, and from about 150 feet up over our heads, the whole grass, intact, was coming down on us, and it just missed the cottage. Um, as he said, it just missed the cottage roof. His wife, because lunch was after the talk, his wife came up holding a lunch tray. She said, what missed the roof? He said, nothing. I thought he didn't even tell his wife about this. So don't do anything real extreme like that if you can. That's one grass that Margaret's standing by. One grass. It's probably 8 feet across, and who's going to get in there and do something to it? The next generation, maybe. This is the same thing. I tell people if you do need to do it, do the same thing as you do with these enormous hostas. Just take a wedge out of it. And I can say that and assure you that I know it's not easy to nibble at this edge until you can get a spade or something sharp in there to start making the incision. I have cried. I have sat back and given up and said, I can't do this. But once you get one piece out, the rest of it comes much more easily. So you don't try to take the whole grass out of the ground. You try to make an incursion into one side, one edge, and then take it out in pieces with a sharp shovel. Don't use a power saw, chainsaw. I've heard people tell me, well, I use the chainsaw. You're going to hurt yourself with putting the chainsaw into the ground. All you'd have to do is hit one rock and back up into yourself. So take out a section of it. It does take time. This is a miscanthus. It was one of the zebrinus striped, horizontally striped grasses. And it took me about 40 minutes to cut back and remove this grass. And it wasn't yet a big clump. It was probably only 4 or 5 years old. So it does take time. And it was iffy getting it out at the house because it had grown so thick right up to the foundation that it was actually grabbing hold of the side of the bottom. Excuse the noise, my printer has turned itself on. I have a printer that seems to have a mind of its own or is haunted. But then I just cut out the section and kept cutting sections out. Questions about that or anything else? I don't see the chat rolling here. But then I can't with my great big.
Nothing in the chat.
Thank you. They're so cute. I know people don't like them running around in their house, but I would like to have them running around eating spiders and crickets. We have crickets in the house. I don't know quite how they get in, but they're so tiny when they're little, they might ride in with the dogs early in the year. and then stay eating organic debris, dust mites and stuff. But we had a cricket in we call them, we had the utility room cricket, we had the bedroom closet cricket, and the kitchen cricket. And one day I had to tell Steve that the kitchen cricket had been killed by the kitchen spider, and a knoll would take care of both of them for us. I talked to some guys who do use them and sell them through their pet store. And they said, yeah, you can have them there. As long as you keep your house heated, you can keep them here. They like it warmer. Um, I said, no, I have a cat. They went, oh, no, then you can't have them because the cat would catch them. So Steve and I are making a list. It's not done yet, but it's pretty good so far of the things that performed best in what has been a real drought. These are established plants. There's been no irrigation at all. And what we were looking for is what was healthy and looked pleasing through the year. Some plants are very drought tolerant, but they're drought tolerant by going dormant. They're just gone. Or by laying down flat on the ground and doing nothing until there's a little bit of rain. So we have marked the ones that we like the best and put them into a list that will keep growing. And you can download that list on the Fridays page. But it's things like the gray leaf yarrow, which is just not bothered at all. This is right now today. It was blooming again, and I cut the blooms off the other week. Used them for something. But you can see the flower stalks still standing up on this one, and one flower left, gone from being yellow to being pale. Bottlebrush buckeye, we told you it was plant of the week recently because it does so well. Needs to be in some shade rather than out in the full open. And this one is in the shade of a pine tree with branches right above it. Beautiful plant. The Amsonias, they don't fall down, they don't wilt. They bloom fine. They're in the midst of turning color fine right now. They turn their fall gold color. Butterfly bush grows in mine spoils, where they just dump all of the stuff that they dig out while they're digging for copper or steel or whatever. It'll grow in those. It'll grow in the raised gravel bed that they make to put railroad tracks through on firm ground. They'll grow in those rocks, so they're perfectly fine in the drought. Killarnia, this is a today picture. There's no water out there. It's out in the full sun. It's not only been healthy, but it's just kept blooming all year. Now there's another one behind it that has let a section of itself die. But I'm going to blame that on somebody stepping on it because this is out there it is. This is out in our swale garden. And when you walk through here, it's a little hard to keep your balance and not put your feet on things. Lavender. This is our lavender, which I keep saying I'm going to dig it out because it's going to get overgrown by the potentilla and the pearly everlasting. I didn't mean there to be lavender there, but it keeps seeding itself around and we let them come up and they do just fine on their own. Biennial lupin has been a winner all year. This is a seedling for this year that will bloom next year. Lots of those. The foxglove penstemon, the red leaf ones anyway. We have some green leaf ones in there someplace, and I don't know whether they are just hiding or they didn't do as well as the red leaf ones. Border jewel, where the drainage is good. We've got some at the neighbor's house that dried up. And it's real hard packed soil right next to the driveway. But when the soil is good, it's good. The meadow sage, Salvia nemorosa, they just don't quit. This is blooms coming up right now. And for that matter, the cooking sage, this is the one called Burgarten with the more rounded leaf. This is one plant that over 4 years' time, with no watering after its first year, 4 years' time, maybe 5 years' time, it has grown from an 8-inch circle to almost a 6-7 foot circle now. And it's been rooting where it touches the ground. So it's actually multiple plants now. And now I cut that all the way down. Every year I cut that all the way down to the buds right at the ground level. And this is what happens with it. We leave it up for the winter. It's so pretty. The ground cover sedums do pretty well on a drought. This is Angelina. This is Kamchaticum, which is called orange stone drought because it blooms kind of a yellow-orange color. has the little teeth on the leaf. It's spectacular. It's not phased at all. The times have done very well. Golden thyme here and woolly thyme. For that matter, the cranberry has done well, but it doesn't look pleasing all year because the older leaves are senescing more rapidly. It keeps growing all through the year. Losing leaves, growing more leaves, losing leaves, growing more leaves, and that process has been sped up this year. Makes it not quite as pleasant to look at. Spiderwort, our native spiderwort, it grows on dunes along the Atlantic coast. So um, other than atmospheric moisture once in a while, it doesn't get much of anything in the dune. But blooming without anybody doing anything to it, growing new crowns that are blooming late in the year, where mostly it blooms first early in the year. The ironweed called Lettermanii. It's a dwarfer iron, a shorter ironweed, about between 3 and 4 feet tall, as opposed to the big 8 and 10 foot tall ones. This one's growing. I'm actually feeling very sorry for it. It's I put it into our wild area, and the milkweed, swamp milkweed, moved in on it. So it's growing through the swamp milkweed, which have all lost their leaves now because of the drought. They are swamp milkweeds after all. We don't want to be in a dry area. Um, and it's going to bloom. It's blooming, and but it can't stand up very straight because things are there. And yet there it is. When I put that plant in, Steve brought it home from the nursery, and I said, "Good, I'd like to have iron butterfly. It's a nice plant." But I didn't yet have the place ready to put it in. So I dropped it into the garden in another place. I said, "Just wait there." 2 weeks later, I went to dig it out and move it to this permanent spot. And when I went to get out, not knowing the roots, I put a shovel in next to it and dug a hole. I could see the bottom of the original pot. So now I put the shovel back in and went to pop it out, thinking I'll just pop it out. And I couldn't pop it out. So I started digging, and I kept digging. In 2 weeks' time, just not quite 2 weeks, it was 13 days, it had sent roots 18 inches down from the bottom of the root ball straight down into the ground. Now, a plant like that is not going to be bothered by drought. It's pulling from water from way too far down. And they are pretty things that the pollinators like. So there is a list, and some of them we found needed shade. We grow Pearly Everlasting in both the sun and in the shade. This is the one that's got shade for part of the day. Not shade all day, but shade part of the day. The ones that are in the sun mildewed and the leaves fell off. They still look decent, but they look very gray. Whereas where they got some shade, they obviously weren't quite as stressed. So these plants that are here are that way. So the big leaf aster that we've been oohing and eyeing about for several weeks in a row, we know it needs some shade to do this good performance that it's done this year, just without having any water. The big leaf forget-me-not, and I know that's not the main thing in this picture, but this big leaf forget-me-not was laying flat on the ground, gasping for water, and with a 1/4 inch of water is rehydrated and standing back up. There's a bunch of them back here doing the same thing. Um, they still cover the ground, but survive. This one's almost a joke. It was a joke. I put a calla lily out into the garden that I planted for the neighbor as a surprise, as a joke. I expected it to be like the calla lily that it was in its former incarnation, 10 inches high. It grew to 4 feet high, and was amazing. It's still green. It's still standing up nicely. It was blooming 2 weeks ago. I think I see a flower back there now. Green and gold, our native green and gold, needs some shade, but there it is. Yeah, there's a few stressed leaves in there. And there's a lot of leaves of the serviceberry that was very stressed and dropping leaves on top of it, but covering the ground, doing what it's supposed to do. And it has a bloom on it here and there all through the year. The epimediums are barrenworts. This one here is called Sandy Claus, Wushanensi from the Wushan province. Totally deep green, never laid down. It's got a piece of fall clement, blue bush clemens crawling across the top of it. The epimedium that they call sulphurium with the yellow flowers, grow it as a ground cover. And that's it right now. No water, no water at all. Still looking good. Still got that nice little reddish edge around the edge of the leaf. Euonymus. nobody does anything. Now it is near the downspout. So when there was rain, it got it, but there was no rain, and it's beautiful. It's a gorgeous plant. The chocolate Joe pie, if it's got some shade, I've got to move our Joe pie to someplace else because we took down the tree that was the last shade that it had. But I'm not moving it now because the pollinators are still on it, and that's why we're growing. We needed some things for late bloom. The big root perennial geranium needs to be in some shade, and the geranium called Herb Robert, which is native from Ontario down to Virginia. It's another one like the spiderwort. It's got a huge area it belongs in. It has little tiny flowers. It's been blooming off and on all summer. Seeds itself around crazily. It's probably one of the parents of Roseanne because it's one of the geraniums that will lay itself out on the ground 4 or 5 feet out from the crown with just repeat blooming branches. Not one of the prettiest geraniums, but certainly one of the ones that it never laid down flat. It never gasped for water. It's looked just like this all summer. Steve put this one in, and I said, okay, you're right. It's done well. This is a fall witch hazel. It happens to be a variegated fall witch hazel that he took a shine to at the Broken Arrow Nursery looking at their demonstration garden. And I will admit, it's lost some leaves, but just a few leaves. For the most part, it kept all its leaves. Some of them faded a little bit or scorched a little bit, but it's looking good. It's a new plant. It's no water. It was a new plant 3 years ago. 3 years ago, gets no extra water. We're really, we're really taken aback by the hellebores and how well they do as long as they've got some shade. Standing up just fine. Leaves are just the color they're supposed to be. Any leaves that you see there are leaves that fell out of the crabapple above it. Euchera villosa, our native hairy alum root, and the hybrids that they're hybridizing now. So you've got colorful, um, colored leaf, Euchera coral bells. If it feels fuzzy on the underside of the leaf, this is one of the parents, and they do it quite well. Some of the panicle hydrangeas, this one I'm pretty sure is quickfire. It's got shade in the afternoon and has not fallen apart like most of them have. It's lost leaves. You see them turning yellow and falling off down here, but it's not drooping all the way over, and it did bloom well even with that heat and drought. The giant Solomon seal is our native one. Sometimes they're 5 feet tall. For some reason, the deer didn't eat them this year. They usually eat them. This is an Asian Solomon seal, and it's bleached out and losing branches here and there, but our native one does it just fine. Steve put the giant arborvitae, the Western arborvitae, and these are green giant arborvitaes that we started as has a stick, a little 8-inch stick back here. And he said, look how well they're doing. Well, the thing is that they're right on the edge of our property, and Gary waters his lawn. So out here about 3 feet, the sprinklers reach to there, and that shrub's roots are in there. So we can't call this totally drought tolerant. But we're glad they're growing up big. Once they get to be about 10 feet tall, we'll start taking down these decrepit spruces and have our new block. Toad lilies finally opened up. So green all the way through. Nobody's watering it. Nobody's taking care of it. And this is Triceratops hirta. It's the later blooming toad lily. There is Triceratops formosana, which blooms in late July. I don't know about that one's hardiness, drought tolerance. Eastern hemlock. No, it's got pine needles all over it. That's not anything dying on the hemlock. But it's not only did well, but it got a second push of growth in the drought. You see the little green tips on it? It's one that I was going to give up on that plant when we put it in. It had such miserable roots. I had to cut back roots to almost nothing in order to put it in. But we watered it for the first year and then left it, and it struggled for 2 years, and now it's coming back strong. This is leatherleaf viburnum. It keeps its leaves through the winter in unless it's a really exposed winter. So it's nice for an evergreen block, and we're growing it as part of our arborvitae U viburnum replacement for our decrepit spruces back there. The leaves are hanging a little bit, but they're not falling off. They stayed green. It has grown. And we decided that we were going to make plant of the week be the Gaillardia this week or the sage. Couldn't decide which one. So you can check the drought tolerant list if you want. And there, Marvin, if you were asking about prairie dock. Here's a prairie dock. There's a bigger one over here, but I don't have a picture of it with me right here. And we had much bigger ones, bigger as in the clump was bigger around. Whoop, they're not bigger leaves. This is full-size leaf, but there's the stem and it goes out of the picture because I wasn't taking a picture of it. I would say that the stem on this one is 8 feet or so up and it's done blooming. It's seed pods up there and the goldfinches come and sit on branches and call to their mates and sway back and forth in the wind eating seeds. It's very nice to watch. There you go.
Okay.
Here, her pink obedient plant. Our pink obedient plant is kind of flopped over. So I said, I'm not sure whether that's because the soil is dry and your roots aren't holding well, but yeah, it's definitely been blooming for a long time. So we should put that one on the list too. It's that Brew Garden sage again. And yes, you can use it to, my neighbor was asking me, can you use it in the kitchen? Yes, it's cooking sage. Bring it in, I hang the branches up to let the leaves dry a bit and use them just like I do in sage that I buy from the store for god awful amounts of money. Just crumble it up and put it into stuffing when we stuff chicken. I mix it into my breading when I'm putting breading on the pork chops. Other plants had a good year. This one, it's one of the reasons it needs to go on the list. This is growing under the overhang on the front, at the front of our house, on our front walkway, north exposure. And I've shown it to you through the year what a nice plant it is in terms of getting a full bloom. And as it goes out of bloom, now it's collecting debris and its flower stalks are falling down and beginning to decay. I cut it back, and I was cutting it back when I ran into the toad that was living under this part. So I didn't cut back the right side. I just cut back the left side. You can see here. And at the time, I told myself I'm going to keep an eye on that and show people what the difference is. So now look at it now. The part that I didn't cut back did not grow back so many new rosettes of leaf. The other part that I did cut back and I cut right along the sidewalk has bellied out and filled in well. And now in October, actually it started in September. It's a flower right there. In September, it started blooming again. And it'll probably bloom off and on into the fall. It's a nice plant. But how it's managing underneath the overhang with concrete all around it, I'm not sure. Plants, they have their way. June 6th to October 2nd. And the toad probably still lives under there. Is it upright and not flopping? Well, that's great. I really need to get my obedient plant put out into get it pulled away from the things that are making it. Well, I've taken the lilac bushes out that were leaning over the top of it. That may be stronger. It gets stronger. This is our we've always had two labs. It works well for us to have them have company. This is Colby. We call her the professor. And this is Yippee Kayo or Kayo. And we can tell Colby's assessment of Kayo and what she felt about this buddy we got for crunch of your first apple. When you grow things to eat, it is just wonderful to go out and pick beans and eat them raw, strawberries and raspberries. And Sonia sent this picture. She said, we finally got apples on our apple tree. It was 4 years. I think they got 2 apples 1 year, and now they've got a crop coming in. She said, and they're really good apples too. You can see the reds on them all over. So she's been cutting up apples and freezing them with a little bit of sugar to use later on. Same thing with nuts. People ask it. The walnuts are fun. Walnuts are a lot of trouble to shell, and they stain your hands terribly. I know one guy who puts them on his driveway and drives over them to crack the outer husk before you can get to the shell. But nuts are good to eat too, and we should be using more of these kinds of things. I'm surprised Sonia has time to be dealing with the apples because it's Oktoberfest time, and if you own a brewery, Oktoberfest is it's a big deal. They take the hops down that Sonia has shown you that they grow hops across the top of their deck as their shade in the winter, in the summertime. They take them down this time of year and separate them. And I don't even want to know about how she manages to separate them because they're scratchy and they're twined all around each other. And then she takes them in, and the crew puts them up as the decorations because hops are hanging from the hops, fruits are hanging from them. So they decorate all in the big tent that they put outside the brewery this time of year. And it came from the garden. They have fun with it. This year they decided to have a group bring in raptors and show people the hawks. This is Einstein, the great horned owl. Sibley, this red-tailed hawk, got attacked by the peregrine falcons that live in the CNN tower in Toronto and can't fly now, so he's in the rehab center. Moose, the northern broadwing hawk, and Newton is grumpy. They said he's molting and he's not feeling like being a character. I think he's more of a character that way. He looks like same Gru in the Pixar movies. I'm not sure what variety apples there were. There are two trees there. Let's see. One of them was, I think, Northern Spy. But what they did, because they wanted to have cross-pollination and have their apples in one area, is they planted two trees right together. And I don't know which one that came from, and I can't remember what the one is, but that looked like the right color for Northern Spy, and I think the other one's a little bit greener. What kind of bluebell again? Let's see, bluebells. The campanula, the one that I showed you blooming through the year, is Serbian bellflower. The last name is terrible. It's Pascherskayana, but Serbian bellflower will get it for you. And it does increase, but it increases out from the sides. It doesn't run around and pop up where you don't expect it. It just keeps getting into a bigger clump. That one's probably 5 or 6 years old now. Serbian bellflower. Yeah, you know what? I will type it into here. Because I don't know, there might be something else called Serbian bellflower. There you go. There it is. There's such intricate design in nature, isn't there? I mean, look at the detail that you can see there. Watch him chew, hear him chew. Poison ivy invasion time. If you're like me, and actually a number of people live where poison ivy is native in Michigan. Poison oak is not, by the way. If somebody says they have poison oak, generally it's where poison ivy has climbed up a tree and gotten a big enough thick enough vine to hold itself up, and it looks like a tree. So they think they have poison oak. But poison oak is thankfully just in the Pacific Northwest. And if somebody actually finds some growing here, then we're probably going to want to let U of M at the herbarium know, because they keep track of what plants are here and not here. But if you have poison ivy in the neighborhood, in the woods nearby, you're probably going to run into poison ivy. I ran into this seedling while I was weeding along the edge of the my garden, along the edge of the neighbors. This is a seedling. This just is 1 year's growth. It came up, it grew several leaves, and then a side branch, which has its leaves coming on it. When I dug it up, I was not fully suited up. Usually I put long sleeves on and pull toeless socks over my gloves so that I've got something covering the gap at my wrist. But I was wearing short sleeves and thought, I can get this out of there. As I pulled it out, this part of the vine wobbled over and touched me in one small spot on my arm. I took the vine in and threw it away right away and washed it right away. But 4 days later, I had one blister right there. And I didn't even bruise the leaves. So there was oil, because it's hot and dry. There's oil on the leaves, and that oil is what causes the problem. So this came as a seed into our yard, and we feed the birds. So of course we're going to get seed around. 2 houses away, there is this crab apple tree. I've been kind of working on the owner, or working to get hold of the owner of the house. The tree has lost all its leaves. They're gone to scab and to drought. The leaves that you see there are all poison ivy. And if you look up into the tree, can you see what I'm seeing? Those are all seeds. And birds love those seeds. It's a high wildlife value plant, poison ivy. And they're eating those seeds and pooping them out into gardens all around. And for somebody like Stephen, who's very susceptible to poison ivy, he's got a systemic reaction. If he touches it with his hand, he's going to break out on his legs and on his torso where he's broken out before. Um, so you got to watch for that and learn what the seedlings look like. It's great to know that poison ivy vine is hairy. There are some other vines that are hairy. The color is a little different on poison ivy. Um, I will this winter for sure. I will cut off the bottom of the vines going up that tree and see if I can uh, keep them from growing back up next year. But if I can at least cut the vines at the bottom of the tree, the bottom of the crabapple, so that the poison ivy that's on the tree dies. Maybe in a few years when it's really dry, it'll be a little safer to pull it all off of there. Um, but the owner of the house is absent. It's rented, and it's hard to get somebody to pay attention to that kind of stuff. But when I looked at that tree and was taking the pictures to show you what the seeds look like, it was in its fall color. And walking home, I realized, oh my gosh, at Jan's house, kitty corner across the street from us, I saw the color caught my eye in her Wigelia. So I was standing here on Cheryl's driveway taking a picture of that Wigelia, and Dash, Jan's dog, was barking at the window. Bark, 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 bark. So Jan stepped out and said, "Who's over there?" I said, "It's me, Janet. It's me, Janet. I said, I never noticed before that there's a poison ivy growing up in here, and I'm taking a picture of it because I'm writing about poison ivy." She said, "I know it's in there." She said, "And I can't, I've tried to get it out from the Wigelia and I've given up. I'm just going to dig up the whole thing and get rid of the whole bunch." I said, "Well, that is one way to do it." The part down at the bottom is still quite green because it's protected by the rest of the shrub. And it's showing the difference in the leaves. Most of the poison ivy that I see in Michigan has thumbs. That's what I call it. It looks kind of like a mitten, fingers sticking out the side. But not all of them. See, this one doesn't have much. So they can be very varied, but there are always three leaflets together, and the branching is alternate. Um, Other things that have three leaflets, like a young box elder, raspberries, there's somebody else I'm missing. They are opposite branched, where this leaf, this is a leaf stalk coming to a three leaflet leaf. This leaf is coming off of this side of the stem, and there's nothing opposing it, nothing right opposite it. And then the next leaf comes off the other side of the stem, and so on. It's alternate leafed. Oh, Virginia creeper is also like that. It has five leaflets.
We have some questions in the chat.
Okay.
Um, how do you keep the deer from eating all the apples and then eating the tree and killing it? They have killed all three of my apples. And this is from David Hammond.
Yeah. Um, unless you can grow the tree, the places that I know where there are apples and there are deer have one of two things going on. They are either um, fenced with a high fence all the way around, either that's plastic vinyl fencing or a permanent fence. They're either fenced or they're growing their apples high up. They have to climb to pick the apples, which is inconvenient. You like the dwarfer trees better, but if you grow them higher up, the browse that the deer can do is only lower down where they can reach. So that first 5 or 6 feet they can reach and they'll eat the buds, but the rest of it. So you've got to protect them until they get big enough. And that's just the way it goes in deer country because they are hungry, and we're not standing out there in the middle of our apple orchards all the time. I'm really feel sorry for you having lost your apples. We're protecting the shrubs that we've planted. Most are not fruiting shrubs, but um, they are good to eat if you're a deer. Most of our shrubs we want to be 10 feet tall, 15 feet tall. So we know we can sacrifice the lower level, but we're protecting the lower level until they get up there big enough. So we have last time we were here, I think last time we did a Free4All Friday, I showed how we put stakes around a tree, and um and we put we weave rope around at buck head level in order to keep the bucks from rubbing the tree. And if it's a new tree and it's something that or a shrub that they like to eat. We put chicken wire on the inside of that round of stakes in order to keep them from sticking their heads in and eating it out. But not much you can do. You can use repellents, and some people swear by them, but I've seen it's kind of like they hold their nose and chew. It was just sprayed and they're still eating it. Was this Jean?
Okay.
Yeah.
And Marvin Petway says, thank you for the rain garden plants in 2001 and 2020 handout. I'm using it for fall 25 maintenance and spring 2026 planning.
All right. So you're putting a rain garden in, Marvin. That's exciting. Our rain garden at the Waterford Library was working so wonderfully. And then the contractors who repaved the front courtyard looked over and saw how we have very little drop. There's only 4 inches of difference between where we collect the water and the rain garden. That's as far down as we can go. And our collection pipe is 4 inches. So basically we have to start at ground level and then angle a little bit down in order to keep the water flowing. That meant that we couldn't put in a collection drain, one of those boxes that you put in the ground, because it would put the pipe further down than at the surface. So we had a concrete basin that we made, and the guys that were putting in the pavers told the library director, they said, "Oh, we can do this for you better." So they put in a collection drain, and now no water gets into the rain garden. I've got to change it around to a dry garden again. It's sad when people don't understand what a rain garden is. I
Okay. And then Jean says, not sure if it's true, but I've read you can wet a paper bag, like a grocery bag, with apple cider vinegar on the bag and put it on skin that was exposed to poison ivy, and it's supposed to draw the poison ivy oil out.
it might work. I've not heard that one, and I certainly haven't tried it. But there are creams. I have someplace in the house here. I have what's it called? Ivy control. Ivy. There are creams that you can put on that are solvents and have something in them that absorbs oil, so that they can take the oil out. And if you can keep track of all the places where it touched, that stuff works. Some people put the creams on before they work in order to protect their skin. I'm never sure where I'm going to touch it. And usually I usually don't touch it. Like each year I might get one blister someplace where I inadvertently touched something that I thought I could clear out. And it comes up and the poison ivy does not spread. The rash doesn't spread. People say it spreads. It comes out first on the sensitive parts, like the skin here or at inside the crook of your elbow, or heaven forbid, if you're wearing shorts, the backs of your thighs. Those will erupt first. And things like your fingers, where the skin is thicker and less likely to absorb it quickly, those will come out later. I did, by mistake, pull a poison ivy vine off of a tree trunk. It was growing right next to a Virginia creeper vine that I was taking off of the tree trunk. And I pulled that vine off of it off, but I only touched it with the pads of my fingers, and nothing ever happened on that one. And it should have. I mean, if it was on other skin, it should have happened. So I'll have to try the apple cider vinegar. And probably it's just any vinegar, because it's probably a pH issue going on. Maybe we'll take more olive in my jade tree out of there. We're so far behind on weeding this year. Went up north with the kids and came back in July, and it was just too hot to pull things. But we're still out there pulling. I go out and pull weeds. And people have asked me, why don't you just spray these? Well, we've got some reasons we don't like to use herbicide. Number one, I don't like to use herbicide because my Parkinson's is probably a result of chronic exposure to 2,4-D on people's lawns. And I think if I can stay away from herbicides, I'm going to stay away from herbicides. But our number two reason it is like herbicides is because you have to watch things die if you use herbicide, and that's not pretty, and our gardens are all ornamental. But I thought, I've been meaning to do this for a while. This is all chickweed. I don't know why we suddenly got an explosion of chickweed coming up in the places where soil and sunflower hearts have accumulated in our bird patio, but this is all chickweed that came up during the rainy part of the year. And I'm using boiling water, which has been my go-to if I need to kill little weeds in the cracks in a patio, straight vinegar, and a 10% bleach solution over here. And that was day one I poured it on there. This is day 2, and they all killed something. I guess it's day 2. This is not day 2. This is day 3, 3, 4, or 5. Sorry, I'm just showing you an after picture. The boiling water works really well on young plants, on the seedlings and they're first coming up. If you go out there and you pour around a rock today and then you pour around another rock tomorrow, you can keep the weeds out with just boiling water. But these are older plants, so the boiling water has killed some of the plants. That's the first day. And then by the 3rd day, you can see that it's killed the ones that were in the crack, but those that were protected by the rock and cooled off by the rock that absorbed the heat, they're still going to go. The vinegar does a more complete job of killing everything that it touched. But if you can see here, where they go? There is grass coming up somewhere here. There's grass. It does not appear to have affected the grass. It has to have a broader leaf to hold more vinegar. And the bleach didn't seem to be doing anything. The first couple of days that I looked at it, I said, nothing happened. But it did kill the chickweed, not the grass. The grass coming up in there. Still green, still coming up. And the dandelion, at first I thought, wow, you killed a dandelion? No, it just killed the leaves that were there at the time. And now it's growing back up again. So I'm not keen on using herbicide because although the plant is dead, I still have to take that out of there to make it look nice. I would rather when the seeds had first come up in July while we were gone, I would rather have poured boiling water on them and gotten them when they were little. Instead, I'll crawl around out there with my little hooked over carpet knife and clean out my spaces. I hope
There's
that
a is it kitchen vinegar or horticultural vinegar?
kitchen vinegar. One of Sonia's friends called her one day and she said, is it possible that I just spent $30 on vinegar when I bought this stuff to kill my weeds? And yeah, it was. There's really no difference. I like that plant diseases are called with it. I think calling things wilt and blight and scorch is neat. Potato scab. And I couldn't find my picture of the potatoes that we dug up at my niece's that had scab, but I had the peanuts that we were digging up. That it's when you dig out potatoes, it's such a wonderful thing. It's such a surprise. You dig it. Oh, here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. Same thing with the peanuts. And to have them come up scabby is not nice. Peanuts are fun. Peanuts are a lot of fun. The flour, see where the peanuts are joined to this stuff right here? The flowers actually grow down into the soil, and the peanuts are growing on the ends of what had been the flowering stalks. Whoops, going the wrong way. So I thought, well, I can show you potato scab. Um, I dug up potatoes and they look like they're still edible. It's scab like you get on the scab. Well, it's not the same scab, but it is the same um, kind of infection that you get on scab on apples. You just pare off the bad part and eat it. But if you've got this, um, you probably need to grow your potatoes in another place. And you probably need to add soil sulfur because when the soil is acidic enough, you don't get scab. It can't live there. There is a type of scab. This Cornell bulletin was telling me about it. I said, "Oh, good. Here we know another one." Um, the uh, the scab agent, this scab called Acidoscabies, is can grow in soil in pH as low as 4.0. So if it's that infection, it's still going to be there. But putting soil sulfur in, it's the pellets that you buy, the little green pellets, and it's sulfur. They sit in the soil, and whenever the soil gets wet, they melt a little bit, and that melted out water plus sulfur becomes sulfuric acid and lowers the pH of the soil temporarily with the pH of the soil moisture. Those are our pet praying mantis that lived with us one winter. This week we put predatory nematodes. Um, it's kind of creepy words to talk about predatory worms, biological control, or useful parasites. Nice Nema is what I was telling the people at the library that we were putting out. This is the company that we usually order from because we're very impressed with the amount of information that they give you and um, the credibility, the correctness of what we see there. Arbico Organics is who we order from, and I ordered nematodes, and I go into there and ask them for their nematodes that are right for black vine weevil, because at the library we have these plants. These are Rodgersia, which look good in the spring, but already, can you see right here? There is a notch at the edge of the leaf. This is late May. And in late May, the black vine weevils have emerged from their pupating form that they spent the winter in the ground as larvae and then pupa. They're emerging and they begin to eat the edges. This year, now, this is what the red jersey looked like. And it shouldn't look like that. In part, it looked like that because the sprinkler system was off for a while, and this is not a plant for dry at all. But also, it's for whatever reason, there are a lot of black vine weevils in that area, and they're coming out and notching the leaves. If I show you this closely, ignore the scorch and look at the notches at the edge of the leaves. Black vine weevils eat and notch into things. They always start from an edge and notch in. And over here, there's Bergenia, another one of the plants that they like to eat. And you can see the notches there. And we're trying to control that. And we certainly don't want to use an insecticide, not around the library and not us, we people who shouldn't be handling stuff like that for a library garden. But we also want to do this as naturally as we can. So we're putting in those notches. And this is rhododendron leaves, black vine, that's a black vine weevil. They sometimes get in your house. They're not fly, they don't fly, they crunch. And they always eat from the edge in. They like rhododendrons, they like yews, they like burning bush, they like about 100 other plants. They're big on coral bells. This one is in one night after it emerged from its pupa, I had it in a jar. It ate that much of the coral bell leaf. But that's not the big damage that they do. This is an article in What's Up 102 on our website. The big damage that they do is as larvae in the wintertime. Now, this is the spring. This is a coral bell root. And people say, my coral bell's all dried out and they kind of rolled out of the ground. Yeah, that's because all winter long, these grubs were eating the roots. Now, this is as big as the grubs get. And then the next thing they do is do this. They form pupae in the ground. And then they're going to crawl out as the weevils. But even one weevil grub eating during the winter can kill a coral bell. And what's happening to those Rodgersia is they're getting their leaves eaten and disfigured in the summertime. And over the winter, they're getting their roots eaten so that they don't have enough root to stay moist enough. So we put beneficial nematodes in. Here's pictures from the net of what nematodes look like. This is microscopic. They're related to roundworms. They're not related to earthworms. They're not segmented. They're related to the same roundworms that cause pinworm in people's feet and intestinal problems. They're related to those worms, but these are the predatory ones that attack, in many cases, beetle grubs. So if I put in nematodes and images, I'm going to get images of all kinds of nematodes. Some of them infect plants, some infect people, some infect mammals. If I put in beneficial nematodes, I'm going to get the nematodes that deal with grubs, with cutworms, with caterpillars, and I'm going to look up on the website, the Arbico Organics, for which one I need for what I'm dealing with, which is in this case black vine weevil. They come in a refrigerated package. Keep it in your refrigerator until you're ready to use it. You get a pouch or a blister pack of powder. You'll feel like Tinkerbell spreading powder around. You put that powder into water and either spray it, and I don't spray it, I usually sprinkle it. You put it onto a moist bed in water, and then you water well, get about a half an inch or an inch of water, because these nematodes swim in the soil moisture between soil particles when they're hunting. And they will hunt in the first day that they're in, they are going to infect the most weevil grubs. And so you want to keep them wet when you first put them in. This pouch that's here, this is enough for about 3,000 square feet. But it's the smallest amount that they have for about $36. I think there's 10 million nematodes in there in a dried state. but they are going to work at least until next spring. If we keep the bed moist enough and there's enough weevil grubs in there, they'll grow right through the winter, through the year, and can stay in until next year. But generally, you have to put them back in because they eat so rapidly, everything that's there. So you look it up on the website or in a book or in the catalog, and you're looking for what grubs it takes. It addresses. This is Heterobacter bacteriophora, which handles black vine weevil, corn rootworm, Japanese beetle, ticks, um, because each group of each species of nematode has its preferred food. Just like each species of bacteria, when you buy BT for caterpillars, it's different. That's you're buying Katsaki variety subspecies. If you buy BT for mosquitoes, you're buying Israeliensis. And then there's another one for uh, bullworm, cotton boll weevil or boll weevil. So the package tells you and the directions tell you what it attacks, and then you know whether or not you're getting the right one. And HB is what we use because it's Heterorhabdus bacteriophora. Um, I have a couple of books that you probably can still find used. Um, this one is about my favorite one for looking for ways to do things without chemicals. It's quite an old book. Barbara Ellis is the editor, and it's the Organic Gardener's Handbook of Natural Insect and Disease Control. And I can look up nematodes and read about what kind of environment they live in, moist, dark environment. The temperatures drop in the winter, they burrow deeper in the soil and rise in the spring. Um, and you often have to reintroduce the nematodes each year because they get up ahead of the things that they're hunting, how to release them into the soil. And it also has this, which is kind of interesting, all the different things you can release, mealybug destroyers and aphid parasites. But you want to know how to put them out there to get the best use out of these organic controls and let them do their own thing. There's also the Encyclopedia of Natural Insect and Disease Control. Roger Yepsen, it's an older book and doesn't give quite as much information, but has a lot of things that you can try rather than going with spraying chemicals. Are they beneficial leaves? Yes, the lily leaf beetle is let's see, I think it's H. No, S. They might be the ST. They might be the Steinernema group of beneficial nematodes. But if you look up, if somebody's got fast fingers, look up arbicoorganics.com and put in lily leaf beetle, and I'm pretty sure that that one is on one of the lists. Stupid lily leaf beetles.
There's also a comment from Elizabeth that they released a lot of ladybugs and got a lot of aphids.
Well, I'm not sure that it's a cause and effect thing, but there were a lot of aphids toward the end of the year. It's hot and dry, and there weren't as many predators when they first were building up. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of aphids. The tips of the milkweeds were all orange with orange aphids on them, and the black aphids were on the spireas and the calicarpa. Yeah, lots of sucking insects this year. Um, Days get shorter and it's time to start taking things in. Time to start putting them into places where they get a little less light because they're healthy now. They've been outside, they've been rained on, they've got full sun. They gradually deteriorate, the plants you bring in, until about Christmas time. People start seeing things like scale or mites on their plants. Rinse them off really well before you bring them in. You don't have to repot them, and you don't have to put insecticide in the pot. Any insects that come in with them are not going to invade your house. But you do want to get them as clean as you can, and then through the fall, as the days are getting shorter, do what you can to keep them clean so that you have fewer problems. Because when they're weak, when the days are real short and the light is real low in January and February, that's when people really get into trouble with their plants and start losing them. Whoops. Mary Ellen Turner's been walking the El Camino Santiago Trail in Portugal. We've been hiking. And this Brugmansia was leaning over the gate, the fence at the wall at her. Is that does that make you want to grow a Brugmansia or what? Ours never have that many flowers on them, never that full. They're beautiful. And a nice corky bark that cork oak that she went past. I'm way over time. I'm surprised that anybody's still here. Are there any questions left?
Nothing in the chat.
That's great. Thank you, Barbara, very much for helping. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We're back next Friday, and I think we're on site. Friday after that, we're going to be coming to you from Grand Rapids. But join us and definitely keep track of what you're doing out there. If you find anything unusual or cool or worth crowing about, take a picture and send it or text it to me. Our phone number's there on the Friday page if you look for it. And the email address is there too. Talk to you all later.
We can ask a quick question.
Sure.
How do you overwinter your Brugmansia?
Oh, I've never overwintered well, yes, I overwintered them for clients in a root cellar. We were lucky enough to have a friend who has a Michigan basement, so an earth bottom basement, not insulated. And we just put it in there and with a light on it until it dropped its leaves, and then we let it sit there dormant and then brought it back out again. Some people take them to greenhouses to overwinter them, but they're so big, they take up so much room that it's hard to find a place to put them. You can try to keep them alive and growing in the house, but even with a light on them in the house, only the top of the plant is within a few inches of the light is going to get any real benefit from that light, and they're going to become scraggly with no leaves further down. So they're not an easy plant to keep. Our choir director at Steve's parents' church kept she had a room in the basement that was all lights. She had fluorescent lights hung from the rafters above and had fluorescent lights on the sides. And she had Brugmansia and hibiscus, and she just put all the plants into the room and would close the door. And whenever it felt dry in there, she would water some things, but she was keeping the plants in their own little mini environment where there was moisture from their shared root balls. Craziness.
So if I just put it in a basement, like in a cold room in the basement where I store my dahlia tubers and stuff, and should I water it or should I just water it sparingly? Because I put like mandevilla there, I cut it down like to about 12 inches, and I put the purple hibiscus there also, like I forgot what
Yeah,
it's called, the one
yeah.
that looks like Japanese maple. And I was going to try to just like agapanthus I keep there too, and I just watered them like once in a couple of weeks a little bit.
Right. Right. It's
But
just like you check your dahlia roots, like maybe once a month, you want to make sure that they're not drying out.
right.
But the
So can I
Brugmansia,
put Brookmansia there with them also kind of on
you
the same
can, but
regime?
it's gonna dry out more quickly, and it's gonna need light for it has to go. It's not gonna go down. It's not going to go dormant by itself outside. It'd be too cold. It'd kill it before it went dormant. So you
Right,
need to leave the light on until it starts dropping leaves, and then you can cut it back or stop watering it. But you're going to have to water it as it needs water. You know, the plants use water based on the number of leaves that they have to draw up and evaporate water. So it's always a gauging exercise for the gardener to say, is the pot getting too light? You know, you must do enough of that. If you keep dahlias, you know how to keep
right.
things by weight.
All right. I'll try. Because last year I left it on the kitchen counter on the in the south facing window. And it was, like half dead, half alive. And there was one leaf by the end of the winter. So
Yeah,
I decided that it doesn't really matter. I might as well just let it go completely dormant.
yeah, and they get mites badly when they get weak, and so
Oh,
that
really?
yeah, so that dries out the leaves even more, and they fall off.
Oh,
Yeah. Good luck.
Thank
And tell
you.
us, and you'll
Yeah.
have to fill us in on what happens because we'd like to try these kinds of things too. I wish I had a root cellar. We have a neighbor who has one, and we're going to go over probably our neighborhood group. And when she starts dividing all of her hundreds of dahlias.
Yeah. Well, I have to divide all my hundreds of dollars too. Not looking forward to that.
Never a dull moment in a gardener's garden. Never
No.
a dull moment.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to everybody. Talk to you next week. Yeah, on the 17th, we'll be back. Have a great weekend.